The announcement for the Kamen Rider Metsuboujinrai movie was an interesting event because, on one hand, it was completely expected to get a 01 V Cinema, but on the other hand, it was pretty unexpected to get a V Cinema focusing on the primary villains of the main show, especially before the secondary writer got his own V Cinema. Is Jin the real secondary writer of the show? No, he's not, but he's certainly a main character in this very, very interesting movie that I'm going to talk all about today. Be sure to leave a comment letting me know what you thought of the Kamen Rider Metsuboujinrai V Cinema, and also consider subscribing to stay up to date with all of my Kamen Rider thoughts, including my recent look at the RealxTime movie and my season discussions on the 01 season. Now, let's
go to Utopia.
This movie starts off on a really high note by immediately introducing us to the best part of the whole thing, Leon Arkland. I actually just realized I don't know how to pronounce his first name, but it's okay, I'm referring to him as Arkland for the rest of the video.
Leon Arkland, this.
As a user of the English language, random spurts of it in Kamen Rider is just always really funny because of how out of place it is to me. I'm never expecting it, and Arkland cranks that unexpectedness up to like a 20.
Yeah, come on. Is that your best? Wow. Amazing. Very good.
He's just hooting and hollering in normal ass English. Sometimes when speaking Japanese, he just slips back into a normal English accent to pronounce words, and it's just genuinely funny to watch.
立型兵士ヒューマギアとして開発されたプロトタイプソルド0。
His transformation into Kamen Rider Zaya is this beautiful blend of being badass and hilarious. Like, he launches the key from one hand to another. How does he do that? How do you do that? Can you physically do that? And then when he does the transformation, he just rips his glasses off. Like, you didn't need to do that, bro, but hey, the movie's much better for it. Even his death is absolutely hilarious. First off, Fuwa just randomly knows he's going to die from a normal ass finisher. Then the random spurts of blood when he's dying, and then Arkland just yells Zaya forever before. The scene is so awkward and strange, but Arkland just makes it funny. I mean, that's literally the movie. The actor's performance breathes so much life into this movie. Even with his mannerisms, he does this weird choking gesture a lot. I don't know what that's about. And he can't even walk into a room like a normal person. He has to be all pizzazz about it. The reason I focus on Arkland's personality so much is because other than that, I don't really like this movie. It feels really empty in a sense. Nothing really feels that earned or important throughout its entire runtime, especially in regards to Metsubojinrai themselves, which are of course the focus of the entire film. So the whole point of the film seems pointless, especially at the end, but I will get to that at the end. For starters, I didn't feel like there was a very interesting story to tell here. Half of the titular organization, Naki and Ikazuchi, aren't really doing anything. It would have been really cool to dive a bit deeper into their backstories or characters since they were shafted pretty heavily in the main season. Or instead, we could have focused on the familial bond of Metsubojinrai that was sort of forgotten in the show. After Jin called Hirobi his dad and Ikazuchi his older brother, I just kind of headcanoned that Naki is the other parent or another sibling, and they're all one big happy terrorist family, but they're not even addressed like that in this movie. So instead, we focus on Jin and Hirobi again, and even then, it's really weird. What I do really like is we finally got some explanation on what the hell was up with Jin's revival. In the show, I really hated how Jin returns as a super duper Humagear with normal ears and the ability to control other Humagears, but then it's never really addressed. At the end of the show, we get this asshole to explain where he came from, but still not really why he came from. I appreciate the explanation of Jin meant to be Zaya's prototype Humagear soldier, but like, this kind of makes the show worse. Why wasn't old terrorist Humagear chosen to be rebuilt as a soldier prototype? Why not literally any of the hidden intelligence robots? Why not Izu after she died? I guess that's a bit weird, but why Jin? Then, if he was a soldier prototype, where was Zaya's influence during his actions in the show? As far as we know, the first thing he did after being rebuilt was break a terrorist out of prison and fight the authorities. Good job, Zaya? Then at the end of the show, he died and was rebuilt again with the sold upgrades retained, and still Zaya did nothing and let him run around and fight a jet or something. And then, in addition to that, Hirobi is technically a sold. I think he has the same earpieces, but maybe they just decided to change his ears after 01, and he's like the same base Yumigear, where sold Jin is like entirely a sold. Sold's a weird name. I do like it gave Jin an interesting motivation since he considers everyone his brothers and sisters, but then the group declares war on humanity again. At the end of 01, Metsubojinrai changed to become a force against the ARC's Agent of Malice. Technically, that's only Jin and Hirobi because the other two just retired. And then this continues with the fight against Azu's newest boy toy, Arcland, with the twist of him hard baiting Izu and just killing her in a really Arcland spectacular way. And thanks to Jin's new motivation, we're still trying to fight Arcland because there's different circumstances. But then they hack a press conference and declare war against all humanity? Why? Isn't it just Arcland? Why are you telling this to everyone? You didn't declare a war against all humanity when I guess, there was precedent for that. Never mind. The declaration is also kind of meant to cause some brief conflict between the pseudo-terrorists, or whatever they are now, but because there isn't much to Naki and Ikazuchi, it once again just feels like a Hirobi versus Jin story, but it could have been interesting to see some different insights on this situation from two characters that have been living among humanity. I guess we just needed everyone to come together as Metsubojinrai the Kamen Rider, which is also weird. It comes out of nowhere since Jin just randomly attaches everyone to Mass Brain after Mass Brain had no effect on him, and then by surpassing Mass Brain, a 01 driver just magically appears on Jin's waist. Azu even acknowledges it as the one she gave Arcland, so I guess at some point Arcland took that and hooked it up to the Ass Brain system with the intent Jin and his friends' family would summon it somehow? Like, we have this problem, but at least Metsubojinrai as a rider is a really cool idea. Genuinely, I think it's super neat to have this unified consciousness Kamen Rider that is named after the organization that mind generated it or whatever. The suit is fine, but the jingle is super badass and fits beautifully with the concept. I would have preferred if his voice was a bit different, either like an amalgamation of the characters' voices or maybe like a different delivery for the lines. They all feel super monotone and hollow, and I kind of wanted Metsubojinrai to sound like a bit more of a badass because I think the concept is so badass. There is a cute touch where the voicing it is actually the voice of the 01 driver system, so it does kind of go with the extent this is like a weird amalgamation rider that has this one robotic consciousness. And then again, he's hilarious because he only speaks in English with Japanese subtitles, and sometimes all his English makes no sense.
Go to Utopia.
Or it's perfect.
Your opinion has been rejected.
I also really love this crazy twist ending where the movie ends on a cliffhanger with the amalgamation just going rogue with a mind of its own, left to become the villain of a future V-Cinema? That's crazy. That's something I wasn't expecting, and I have to applaud the creators for that, but at the same time, it's the worst part of the movie. The twist is really sudden, has no setup, and it just feels like this cheap trick to shock the audience and get them to watch the next movie without marketing the two as a duology together. Additionally, it feels sort of disrespectful. To me, V-Cinemas are meant to be a story about a set of characters separated from the main season story. I like how Aruto's not in this movie because I always have a pet peeve when the main characters appear in the V-Cinemas since it's not their story anymore. This movie, focusing on Metsubojinrai, ends with essentially their defeat in the form of their consciousness's death to set up another movie. As a movie fan, I enjoyed this crazy expectation subversion. As a Kamen Rider fan, I love this subversion of the V-Cinema formula, but as someone who was watching the Metsubojinrai movie without that proper setup and the fact it deals with the titular characters, it kind of just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. As you can probably tell from the amount of times I went from something interesting to something bad about that interesting thing, or vice versa, this movie's really conflicted for me. There's a lot of cool ideas, but each one kind of has a weird execution, or a bad idea with a good execution, or whatever, and the end result is just a bit too muddled for my liking. It's definitely not as amazing as RealxTime. I'm excited for the Valkyrie Valkan V-Cinema, but at what cost? If you want to hear my thoughts thoughts on that final installment in the 01 timeline. Once again, be sure to subscribe to this channel, and I hope to see you next time.